Sun, who looked like they would be heading home, instead are going to Las Vegas.
This is nothing but that sports talk.
There's another shot at the Connecticut Basketball Championship, and it's a team for the WNBA. As I welcome to this episode of Nothing But That Sports Talk, courtesy of the Suns come from behind win against the Chicago Sky in Game 5 of the semifinals. This is Rafique Louison alongside Maggie Hendrick, who's a writer for Bally Sports. Welcome to the show, by the way.
Thank you so much. I'm appreciate you asking me.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on everything that's been going on during these first few rounds of the playoffs, including the matchup that we're about to have.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot to talk about. I was in Seattle earlier this week, and then I was at the game last night in my hometown of Chicago. So there's a lot.
Yeah, so I mean, since you mentioned you were in the hometown of Chicago, like, what are your overall thoughts on this guy getting eliminated the way they did?
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough to watch because you knew they could play. I knew they can play better than that, you know? And it was tough to see them struggle just to make shots. And that's, I think, more than anything, the reason why they lost. It's so simple, but it's just the truth. And the players admitted to it in the press conference last night. They just couldn't get their shots off. They couldn't. And that, of course, a lot of that has to do with Connecticut's defense. But even when they were getting good looks, the ball just wasn't going in the hoop. And my friend Shakia Taylor at the Chicago Tribune wrote a really lovely column. And she said, you know, there's a lot of things basketball is about, but the main thing you need to do is for that ball to hit. You need a leather ball to hit nylon, not a metal hoop. And it was hitting the metal hoop too much and not going into the basket last night. So it was just, it was really tough to see when you know a team can do better.
Exactly. And you know what? This is what my New York Liberty was supposed to do after they won game 1 in the first round. But obviously Chicago redeemed themselves and won that one. But now Chicago went all out to lose in game 1, lasted until the 5th game. And they couldn't even, well, this is the 3rd time in the last 4 years they lost to the Connecticut Sun in the WNBA Playoffs, since they did defeat them last year on the way towards the championship as a 6th seed. Right now, the flip the script, and, well, yeah, this kind of goes to show that basketball is more unpredictable than what our brains tell us.
Yeah, you know, if there is anything I've learned about basketball this particular playoff season, is how much more it's mental. And I mean, and you know that, you like, right? We always hear that. We always hear basketball players say that, how much more mental it is. But these players at the WNBA are such a high level that when they are not that much different physically. It all comes down to mental and peaking at the right time and staying focused at the right time. I mean, the season was a lot because it was so compressed that, like, to stay focused like that the entire season and get to the finals, I mean, that's a tough thing to do.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, because I mean, the coach talked about it, the press conference. I mean, it all comes down to the team staying together and actually following the coach's strategy. I mean, it also comes down to which team has the last run, or if it's not the first punch, it's always the last punch. What this playoffs always taught us. I mean, you've seen that from these two teams that are about to face off in the WNBA finals, and 2 years ago they faced off for a spot in the finals.
Yeah.
And you're talking about two franchises that have yet to win a championship. Connecticut Sun having the most championships and the most wins without a championship, even more than the New York Liberty. This Connecticut Sun team had the potential to make it this far, but they always run into bad luck, whether it's injuries or you just ran into a buzzsaw.
Yeah.
Or as Cole's always said.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an exciting thing for the league that we're going to, no matter who wins, we're going to get a new champion, a new franchise will get to call themselves champion, and a new coach. Because both Kurt Miller and Becky Hammon, neither of them have won a WNBA championship, obviously, as coach. So I think that's an exciting thing for the league. I was also, you know, like, the thought of Chicago breaking the no back-to-back team, nobody wins a back-to-back championship. You know, I thought that would have been a cool thing to cover and see too. But I think either way, you just have great storylines, you know?
Yeah, and well, we on the subject of storylines, like which WNBA story will be so much intriguing to watch by the time the season comes to an end? Kurt Miller win his first championship, and- or Becky Hammond? And this comes from the coach perspective.
I think I think I'm honestly either way because you have good stories. I think personally I'm more excited about the idea of Becky Hammond, mostly because we're starting to see more and more WNBA former players become coaches. Like now we have Vicky Johnson, we have Tanisha Wright, and I want to see that trend continue. I think it's a good trend, and so Becky winning a championship as a coach would be a big deal. It'd be pretty great because she has stood where these women, where her players are standing. So I think that would be cool. But there's also a lot of cool stuff with Kurt Miller. That would be an openly gay male coach winning a championship. Like there aren't many openly gay men who are out in the coaching ranks. So seeing something like that happen is also a great story.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, since you talk about Kurt Miller being the gay and coach that he is, I mean, coaching a bunch of LGBT, basically an LGBT roster because literally
Yeah.
all the women on the Connecticut Sun are gay. But we don't talk about that on the air. Just out of respect for people's sexual preference.
Right.
It is worth bringing up. So
Well, I mean, and there are even two engaged couples on the Sun with Jasmine Jones or Jasmine. Why am I forgetting Jasmine's last name?
yeah, Jasmine
Thank you.
Thomas, and
Her
Natasha Hanneman.
Yes, and Tisha Heidemann, and then
Alyssa Thomas
Alyssa
and
Thomas.
Duana Bonner. Duana
Yeah,
Bonner already has two children with I don't know what happened with the first man woman that
we
she
don't
has.
need to talk about it. We don't know.
But that's a conversation when we get off the air. But it's yeah, but that's
um,
now this is a very interesting story. I mean, the fact that they managed to keep the Connecticut Sun are able to keep this chemistry together, literally, not just on the court but off the court and in the dating world.
yeah, I mean, like we've seen obviously it work before because the Vanderquigs, Courtney Vandersloot and Allie Quigley are a married couple on the Sky, and they got to celebrate a championship together last season. So the WNBA is an interesting place because of the fact that these women are more comfortable being open about their relationships. Um, but it also does make me wonder, like, how are you taking things home? What things are you leaving at the court? It's an interesting thing. And, if they want to talk about it, then I would be willing to, but also like you said, we also want to respect their privacy and their private lives are their private lives, even when they happen to be with one of their teammates.
Exactly, and since we keep everything private, I mean, this is very interesting because between these two franchises, the Connecticut Sun, the Aces, you have at least one player that's won a ring before.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to watch Dewana Bonner, who won a ring with the Ace or won a ring with Phoenix, and Chelsea Gray, who won a ring with the Sparks, and seeing how their leadership kind of guides the way. Because if there's anything WNBA players respect, it's a ring, right? They really respect that. They're going to listen because they know that player's been there. They've been to the promised land, so they're going to listen to what they say. And it's interesting seeing both series this past couple weeks, seeing how Dewana's leadership has really guided the Sun, and then how Chelsea Gray has become a very vocal leader on the court and everything for the Aces.
And not to mention the battle between the last two MVPs, or in this case, two players that snagged the last three MVPs, with Jonquel Jones going up against A'ja Wilson. Who do you think has a better individual one-on-one matchup?
I have to give the edge to A'ja because she's just been so all around. And the crazy thing about A'ja to me is how her game has grown this season. That because Becky Hammond has opened up the offense, now we're getting to see a little bit of an outside game from A'ja. We never saw that before, which, she was almost always just in the paint. So it's a fun thing to see, like how A'ja has been able to continue, even being the MVP, two-time MVP now, one of the best players in the world, and she's still pushing and growing her game. I mean, it's just been a really cool thing to see.
Exactly. And I know we talked about this earlier, but obviously, if you ask me, the most interesting franchise story to tell when it comes to these two teams, I would say the Connecticut Sun would need this a bit more than the Aces because the Connecticut Sun, you remember Kurt Miller kind of mentioned this. There are some players that are playing in the final year of the contract. You don't know where they're going to come back. At least with the Aces, and you know Angel Wilson's going to be back. You know Chelsea Gray's going to be back. You know Kelsey Plum's going to continue playing for them. Oh yeah, we can't forget about Jackie Young, who went to game time shot in game 3 in that series with the Seattle Storm.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But the thing is about that is even though you know a player might be backed by a contract, we never know what's going to happen in the offseason physically. We never, you can never count. If you're in the finals, you got to go win that chip right now because you don't know as far as injuries, as far as whatever other kind of things can happen to a player when that might come up. So when it's time when you are ready to win, like when you're in those finals, you have to be urgent. Obviously, like there's some that like probably Brianna Jones will be on another team next year because the Sun won't be able to can't afford to pay her what she's worth. And she should also could be a starter somewhere else. And you don't know if Natisha Heidemann will be back or Courtney Williams. But no matter what, if you're in the finals, you have to be urgent about it because you don't know what could happen.
Yeah, and while we're we talk Courtney Williams, she was on the roster the last time the Connecticut Sun were in the WNBA Finals when they were taken out by the Washington Mystics. She was fortunate enough to come back after those not so great seasons with the Atlanta Dream.
Yeah.
So the fact that she still proved that even as a lower tier starter, she could come through with a clutch.
She has really, I think, particularly in this playoff series, shown her worth and shown how valuable she can be to any WNBA team, which is important because, like we said, she's going to be coming off of her contract. So, yeah, I think she has really been a model player this year, and it's great to see. It's really great to see when you can see her being confident in herself. Because you can see there are moments where she doesn't have that confidence as much. So those moments when you see it and she's like, yes, I'm going to take this shot. Yes, I've got the perfect pass, whatever. I'm going to make this steal. Those are special moments to watch Courtney.
Exactly. She's always fun to watch. Well, fun, but not fun to watch. And I should know that because at my first WNBA game I went to when they played the New York Liberty at Barclays Center over a year ago, I watched her hit the game-winning shot in overtime against us. I would know that more than anybody. It literally got me thinking she's a Trae Young of the WNBA's Atlanta Dream. Well, with the only exception she left after that, but you know what? That's how it is when you add her. She's a very useful piece if not for rebuilding the Atlanta Dream, then a championship contender Connecticut Sun.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations that it worked out for everybody. The Dream where they are now. I mean, if they wouldn't have had so many injuries, I think the Dream would have been in the playoffs. And then you look at the Sun and see how comfortable Courtney is there, that it ended up working out for everybody, and that's like that. When you see a trade, this wasn't a trade, obviously, but when you see a trade, you just want to see everybody come out okay. I mean, unless you always want to make sure the New York Liberty win, right?
Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, we knew we weren't ready for Chicago, but the Connecticut Sun we knew we weren't ready for you. You a Chicago Sky fan?
I don't consider myself a fan of any particular team. It's like I am a Chicagoan, but because the Sky started when I was an adult and already a journalist, I didn't like pick up being a fan of them like I did. Like I'm a Cubs fan because my father, my grandfather, my grandmother, and my great grandmother were all Cubs fans. Like there was no question if I was going to be a Cubs fan. But we didn't have that. I didn't have that same like in my blood thing with the Sky. So like I followed them as a Chicagoan, but I'm not like a fan, if that makes sense.
Fair enough.
Because it also, when you're talking to the players all the time, you have to push that fan thing out so that you don't make it weird, for lack of a better term. So like I have good relationships with a lot of the players on the Sky. And if they ever like saw me being a fan in some way, that could end up making that weird. Or also, I don't know if Kurt Miller or DeWanna Bonner would want to answer my questions if they thought I was a Chicago Sky fan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, you got to make sure you put the fandom aside when you do a journalist. And this is coming from somebody that's been covering the WNBA for nothing but the sports talk since the bubble. So, I mean, you always got, I mean, yeah, when you're talking to players, you always got to talk about the games on its own. I mean, that's pretty much how it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, this is going to be a pretty interesting. It's in the WNBA finals. Who you think is going to take it?
It's funny. I have picked against the Sun. I thought that Dallas could take him out. I really did. And then I thought the Sky were going to beat him. And I think I'm going to pick against him again. And maybe they'll prove me wrong. But I think this Aces team is just so loaded. They're just so hard to put on their heels. You don't see it happen very often. So I think it's probably going to be Aces in 4.
I'm gonna pick against you and go with Connecticut 7-5.
All right.
I just have that little upset. I just have that little upset mentality and of always
feeling
underdog. Always
Yeah.
underdog teams or underdog teams. Unless it's New York, then that's different. I just have that little mentality of supporting underdog teams when I'm confident and I know at their healthiest year possible, they can get it done.
Right.
And Connecticut being the closest city to me, I'm from Brooklyn, New York, by the way, and Connecticut being the closest city to where I live, it's about time the Connecticut basketball landscape has another championship. And it's coming for the Connecticut Sun and not the UConn Huskies.
Yep. All right.
So many championships for the UConn Huskies. So
yeah, they've had a few, huh?
Had one or more than a few. Connecticut. I mean,
I was joking. One or two.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, if you look back at the archives, they kind of had their failures in the WNBA finals going up against teams like the Seattle Storm and Sacramento Monarchs in the 2000s to, of course, the loss of the Mystics 3 years ago. I think this is their time.
Yeah.
DeWanna Bonner that won a championship with the Phoenix Mercury. I mean, you brought back Courtney Williams from that championship run, and then also, and not to mention, you add a couple pieces since the past few years, and Dejanay Carrington, who's proven to be somewhat useful when she has the ball in her hands. But what are your impressions of Dejanay Carrington during this year's playoffs?
I think she's done a good job of making sure that she's being valuable, whether she's on the bench or on the court. She is the loudest cheerleader for her team and the loudest person making sure that they, even when they were down in games, making sure that they don't get too down on themselves, which is an incredibly valuable thing to have. You need to have that. I mean, obviously she's young; she still has a lot to learn, but I've been impressed with her. Yeah,
exactly. And she's part of the roster that survived series clinching road games in the first 2 rounds. You said you think they weren't going to make it, but yet they did it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
All the Aces, all they had to get through was a depleted Phoenix Mercury roster, and then a Seattle Storm that was basically prepared for Sue Bird's retirement.
Okay, I am not going to let you say that the Seattle Storm were an easy team to get through when you have Brianna Stewart and Jewel Lloyd.
No, we're not easy to get to, but let's be real.
I do not.
After a seesaw regulation game in Game 3, they did blast them in overtime, and then when they were down by as many as like 10 points in Game 4, Chelsea Gray took over.
Right. But that didn't mean it was easy for them. They had a rough road. Like,
I mean, from a series perspective, it took 44 games to beat them, compared to when they got blasted by the Storm in the bubble 2 years ago.
The Seattle Storm were. I don't think you could compare playoffs anymore because of how the playoff format has changed. But the Seattle Storm were the hottest team coming out of the playoffs or coming into the playoffs. I know more than one reporter who actually picked them to win it all. So I think probably Phoenix was an easier win for the Aces, but I don't think either of the semifinals were easy because those were the top 4 teams in the league, no question. and they just were beating the hell out of each other. So I think Seattle gave them a very tough time, and it just showed how focused and how together the Aces are, that they were able to win those games. Because I will tell you, just being at that game on Sunday, the roller coaster overtime one, I was exhausted just from being there. So actually playing it, I mean, that they all were able to stay focused and just get the job done on Tuesday, that was impressive.
Exactly. And the fact that the Seattle Storm were able to keep this together this long up until Sue Bird's final game, like earlier this Tuesday, it's just insane. I mean, this is basically one of the best storylines in the WNBA playoffs, which is watching Sue Bird's final game. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, I mean, it is one of those privileges that I'm gonna like mark down of like the best things I've done in sports journalism, getting to be at Sue Bird's last game, and also that game on Sunday. That game Sunday was probably the best basketball game I've ever seen in person. So those were great things, and it's important to note that it's not like Sue Bird was coasting her way out. She made that game what should have been a game winner, and then she was having a hell of a series too. So, yeah, I think Sue Bird probably, it's always tough right after you lose, but I think eventually Sue Bird will be very proud of how she went out.
And I'll tell you this one thing though, I was at least hoping that the series go to a game 5 in Vegas, but Aces wasn't having that.
Yeah, the Aces just wanted to just get it done.
Mm-hmm. But while we're on the subject talking about the W, like out of the first round exits that we've had this year's playoffs, which one you thought was most disappointing?
Which series?
Which series is more disappointing?
I wasn't really. I mean,
The teams that got eliminated.
Yeah, I don't generally look at teams like that, but like I don't think there was any team that like completely didn't show up. Even the Phoenix Mercury, that they got to the playoffs was a miracle, and that they were able to still have decent games against the Aces was impressive considering all that they've gone through. So like, and I thought the Dallas Wings did a heck of a job because they took, and so did the Liberty, because they took their series to 3. And like the Washington Mystics, those were great games between the Storm and the Mystics. The Storm just were better. So I don't really think of any of the teams disappointing. They get so up for the playoffs. You always know you're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll tell you this one thing. When you make that elusive playoff appearance, you're building a future, without question.
Yeah, like say for a team like the Liberty or the Wings that are younger teams that don't have as much experience, getting 3 playoff games in, getting the experience of what a playoff game is, what the travel is with playoffs, what the expectations are, how there's so much more media, that was really valuable for them. And that's going to be really valuable as they try to build next year.
Exactly. And you continue that momentum after the past few seasons in the playoffs. Imagine what players are going to get interested in coming to that team.
Yeah, I think so. And that's like, I don't know exactly what the free agent situation is for New York or Dallas off the top of my head, or Phoenix, but the way a team performs in the playoffs matters. It matters when free agents are looking at if they're going to go join that team.
Yeah, it really does. Well, now that we're done talking about the playoffs, or you pretty much making predictions. I mean, I got Sun in 5. We got Aces in 4. But when we talk a little bit about one of the biggest storylines that happened earlier this year with the Brittany Griner situation.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I mean, it's just heartbreaking. It's the whole situation that she has to be over there to play, that she's away from her wife, that we don't know what's happening with her now, which is just kind of the way the legal situation in this goes. I mean, it's just heartbreaking. And when I was in Atlanta was the day she got sentenced. And after that game, Tanisha Wright talked about how the league is not whole and will not be whole until Brittany comes home. And that was the best verbalization I heard of the feelings of the players. Like I've heard a lot of players say something similar or close to it, and Tanisha did a very good job of like distilling it down and saying like we're just not us because we don't have Brittany with us.
Exactly. And I've been on Zoom calls with the Washington Mystics players and players where they literally they don't think much about the game that they have currently because all they can care about is what goes on with the Brittany Griner situation. The fact that she's stuck in Russia up until this point and didn't even get to play in the playoffs. And then and then adds on. And we're not even going to talk about Skylar Smith skipping the games for personal reasons. What she does is what she does. But to this one, get into this situation, that affected the Mercury a lot. They were fortunate to even get to the playoffs that the Minnesota Lynx couldn't win on the road against the Connecticut Sun. Another play led by another player who said bye-bye to the WNBA on retirement, Sylvia Fowles.
Yeah, we're gonna miss Sil. I just love watching her play. I grew up. I first became a basketball fan in the '90s and an NBA fan in the '90s. So even though I'm a Bulls fan, I very much appreciate big centers like Patrick Ewing. Even though I'm gonna be honest, I don't like the Knicks, but centers I know, sorry, Alonzo Mourning, like those big centers. Sylvia was cut kind of that cloth, in that she led the league in rebounds in her very last season. Like that, it just shows if she wanted to keep playing, she absolutely could. But it was just time for her. So, it was exciting to watch. I appreciate that both Sylvia and Sue let us in on their retirement decisions and let us say thank you to them in the ways that fans and media wanted to, because it's a tough. They could very easily just at the end of the season be like, "Hey, I'm done," but that would kind of make it not fair to the fans. So I appreciate that they did.
Yeah, it's going to be tough because, well, obviously the Minnesota Lynx is still going to be somewhat relevant because you got Lufisa Collier, Ariel Powers, and Caleb McBride going into next season. But that's a conversation for another day. But let's transition a little bit because you mentioned you're a Chicago Bulls fan and you hate the New York Knicks. I want to get when you started watching basketball as a fan growing up, like how much you enjoyed the championship accomplishments that Michael Jordan led the Chicago Bulls to, and the decimation of the New York Knicks, with the only exception of the year where they did make it to the playoffs in 1994.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Rafique, the '90s Bulls are the reason I'm a basketball fan to this day. I would that was what my family did during at night. Like we would watch Bulls games. Like my sister and I, my brother and I, when we got to the playoffs, it would be my whole family sitting around watching Bulls games. And so obviously Michael Jordan is like the apex, the very biggest, and Scottie Pippen too. But then everybody who played on those teams, whether it's Steve Kerr, BJ Armstrong, or Horace Grant, or like I can just go on and on with the names, they all still mean a whole lot to me, even though it's been quite a while. But and that was like the fun of watching The Last Dance. Was for me, it was bringing back memories from because like I was born in 1979, so when the Bulls started their championship run, I was like 11 or 12, and it finished when I was 18. So it just it was extremely, it really imprinted on me because those were my teenage years. That's when you become a fan of something. And so even I didn't watch the NBA as much in the 2000s because the Bulls weren't very good. So until really Derrick Rose came along, I didn't watch the Bulls as much. But the effect that those teams, and then also the Bad Boys Pistons, the Knicks. I will be honest, John Starks, I am sure he's a very nice man. I will always hate him. I have to.
Dunked on Jordan, right?
Yeah. The one time, please. And then and even Reggie Miller, and there's just so many players who stand out to me. Being in Seattle this past week, seeing all the Seattle, like they still are very much, they miss their Seattle Sonics, and there's so much all around Seattle. There's murals and all kinds of things still depicting the Sonics. And it just, I really was like, oh, dang, I wish I still had one of my 96 championship shirts. I would have worn that around. Be a little bit of a troll.
Yeah, I bet you. Yeah, I bet you enjoy it. I mean, I've been to Seattle and seen the King Arena, which is now the Climax Arena. Yeah, I've been to Seattle before. Very nice city.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And I've also been to Chicago before, like when I was a teenager in 2008. Very nice city. I never got to see the United Center, but I got a feeling why it's called the Windy City. But yeah, I mean, since we talking Chicago Bulls, like, what were your impressions of seeing the Chicago Bulls get back to the playoffs this year, only to get taken out by the Milwaukee Bucks?
You know, I was excited for them considering all of the injuries that they dealt with, all the bad hands. I think we're going to start seeing better stuff out of the Bulls. And if there ends up being a full rivalry between Milwaukee and Chicago, that's great. That would be a great thing to see, like the rivalries used to be between Detroit and Chicago. Like, let's have a full rivalry. The two towns the cities are 90 minutes apart. You can take a quick train ride from Chicago to Milwaukee and Milwaukee to Chicago.
Is that close?
Yeah, they're that close. So like, it would be fun to really see. It's almost like New York and Boston. They're like that close. So a Chicago-Milwaukee rivalry would be so much fun. And I hope, obviously Chicago has to push up, right? They have to get to meet the Bucks, but if they can, man, that'd be a blast.
Yeah, but obviously, well, you're led by DeMar DeRozan, and who had some of his best moments for the Chicago Bulls. We had like 2 straight buzzer beaters for the Chicago Bulls last season to the end 2021 and start 2022. So,
and yeah. He's a big WNBA fan. He was at a lot of the Sky games last season and some of the ones earlier this season too. That's the cool thing. A lot of the Bulls, like it's not like the Timberwolves and the Lynx or anything like that. They're not owned by the same person, but the Bulls and Bulls players and Sky players definitely support each other.
Yeah, obviously, we're speaking about the Chicago Sky. Now, Candace Parker said in the press conference she doesn't really know if she's going to come back. It depends on like her stamina and how she evaluates the off season, and that's fine because even though this is the same Candace Parker that said we do not want to suck during the regular season because 60-60 were terrible in a championship year. It's the same Candace Parker who played on the Chicago Sky team that was held to only 5 points in the fourth quarter.
Well, I mean, she had a bad quarter. The whole team had a bad quarter. I'm not going to hold that against her. It happens. But I think what she needs, I don't ever like to say, hey, a player should retire, because retirement is one of the most personal and difficult decisions an athlete has to make. And a lot of times it's made for them. So when an athlete is in that privileged position to get to say, I want to retire, yeah, I say give them all the room and all the time in the world to make that decision, because it's a lot. It's a lot. Like, if you've been playing basketball, a lot of people who are playing basketball have been playing since they were 5, 6, 7 years old. And now all of a sudden it's like, now you're not going to do that. You're going to have to completely change your life. That's a lot. That's a lot to put on somebody's mind. So I am all for giving athletes as much room as they need to make those decisions, you know?
That is also true. Well, now wrap up this episode, Nothing But That Sports Talk. Thank you for stopping by, Maggie. I can't wait to see what you do in real Zoom conference, obviously, during this WNBA finals. And yeah, so all the balls out there, get your head in the game and enjoy the WNBA finals.
Thanks, Rafique.